Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and it's been a little while since I've been able to get a video out, and between work and just a lot of other things, some family issues and all that, I've had to kind of set the headphones aside for a little while, but I'm hoping to get back into this and start getting some reviews and videos out in the near future. So I appreciate you all being patient with me, and I appreciate the new subscribers. I think I'm up to pushing 1,700 subscribers now, and pretty happy about that. I've been doing this, about 2 years now. So anyway, I do appreciate all of you that have watched my videos, and appreciate you supporting my channel. Anyway, I'm here tonight with my full review of the Erzetich Thalia. And it's been a little while since I did my first impressions, and I wanted to first of all thank Erzetich and Unsung Audio, who actually were the ones that loaned these to me for a review. And I want to thank them for being patient with me, because I've had these, I know it's been over 3 months now, and I really need to get this review done and get these sent back, so someone else has a chance to listen to and review these headphones. So anyway, this is my full review, and this is the third Erzetich headphone that I've reviewed. I did the Mania and the Phobos in the past. Those were both last year sometime, and this is the third, and it's the smallest of the three, and it's the lowest priced of the three. These are made in Slovenia, and this headphone currently sells for 599 euros, or you can get it in the US through Unsung Audio for 699 US dollars. And like I said, I just wanted to say how thankful I am, to Unsung Audio for being so patient with me, and you will get your headphone back very soon, so I'll get it shipped out this week. Anyway, this headphone comes in 3 different colors. This is a dark wood with an aluminum grill. It also comes with black wood and a black grill, or with a lighter colored wood and a black grill. This is a wired on-ear mid-size open back headphone, and it uses a 40 millimeter titanium dynamic type driver. Like I said, this is quite a bit smaller in size than the Mania or the Phobos. The Phobos, the ear cups, were about 4.5 inches in diameter. Actually a very large headphone, probably the largest I've reviewed so far. Mania is a little smaller at about 4 inches in diameter, and these are about 2 3/4 in diameter. These are actually just about the same size as a Grado SR80, which is also an on-ear headphone. So these are pretty small and compact. According to Erzetich, the impedance of this headphone is 32 ohms. The sensitivity is not listed, but these are very efficient. They're actually intended to be used with a portable device, so they're very easy to drive, not power hungry at all. I actually compared these to the Grado SR80, which is a very easy to drive headphone. I plugged them both into my benchmark HPA2 headphone amp, which has 2 outputs on it. And with the same amount of power, these were actually slightly louder than the Grados. So these are very easy to drive. I don't have a portable device to try these with, but I mean, even with a low powered amp, the volume knob's at like the 8 or 9 o'clock range. I mean, these things take very little power to drive. The weight of these, Erzetich claims 270 grams, which is actually very, very light. And according to my scale, they came in at 271, so we're almost exactly the same on that. Give you a closer look, and these The ear cups, like the Mania and Phobos, are made of a solid piece of linden wood and then machined out and carved to this shape. This is not a veneer, this is a solid piece of wood. The grills, I believe, are aluminum. The headband and yokes are sort of a spring steel, and the yokes revolve this way and they also tip this way, and they actually go all the way around. And these have a similar adjustment to the Mania and Phobos, where it's a screw type adjustment that lets you slide the yoke up and down. And then they've got padding under the headband here. And the ear pads, I believe, like the Mania and Phobos, are synthetic leather. Erzetich, apparently, they take pride in the fact that no animals are sacrificed to build their headphones. The cable on these is detachable. It's about, this is the cable that came with them. It's probably about 4.5 feet long. And at the headphone end, at the ear cups, it uses standard 3.5 millimeter connections, which is pretty much common now. I mean, just about every headphone now seems to either come with 3.5 millimeter or 4-pin mini XLRs. And then at the amp end, it has a 3.5 millimeter connection. This is single-ended, and if you want to use it with a 6.3, just snap on an adapter and you can use it with your home amp, which is what I've done for this review. And getting into that a little bit, the equipment I used. I used CDs to do my review. I'm using a Cambridge Audio 540C CD player. As a transport only, I'm running a digital signal from that to a Benchmark Media DAC1, and then an analog signal to various amps that I tried this with. When I first got this headphone, I still had the head amp GSX Mini, which is an excellent amp, and I did my first listening with that, but that was on loan and I had to send that back. So most of my listening was done with the Audio GD Master 9 from the single-ended output. Anyway, that's where I did most of my listening. I tried this with a few different amps, and it wasn't until recently that I decided to give this a shot with the Felix Audio Echo, which is an OTL type of tube amp. And I was actually very pleasantly surprised, because usually an OTL type of tube amp isn't an ideal match for a low impedance headphone. Usually, you know, you want to use 100 ohms or higher. The Echo is an excellent match with the Bear Dynamic T1 second generation, which is a 600 ohm headphone. So, but actually, I've had real good luck with that amp with several different low impedance headphones, even a few planar type, if they're more efficient, like the Kennertons. Not a real good match with the Hi-Fi Man planar headphones, which are harder to drive. But anyway, hooking this headphone up to the Felix Audio Echo actually made a pretty major difference in the sound. So I'm gonna talk about this headphone both ways, either plugged into a solid state amp like the Audio GD Master 9 or the head amp GSX Mini, which are both excellent amps, and then compare it to the sound that I got plugging this into the Felix Audio Echo, because completely different headphone, really, you know, the sound. And to be honest, I actually liked it. I like it better with the Echo amp, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes. Anyway, the music I used in my review, I typically use a combination of rock, pop, some electronics. I tend to listen to a lot of acoustical music. I like natural, real instruments. They do a better job of telling me how a headphone, you know, really sounds when I'm trying to reproduce something that's real, you know, more so than electronic sounds. I really like female vocals. I think they're a good test of a headphone, you know, as far as the clarity and the detail in the voice and whether the voice breaks up or not on certain notes. So anyway, that's the majority of my listening is acoustical with female vocals. Do listen to a little bit of orchestral music, which is an excellent test of imaging and soundstage. The two main headphones I use to compare this to in my review, and the reason I use these two is because of similar price. Like I said, this headphone sells for $699 US. So I wanted to use a couple headphones that were in the same price category, and a headphone that I've had a long time, actually since 2012, and it was my first audiophile headphone. And a headphone that I still really like a lot is a Hi-Fi Man HE500. And I originally paid $699 for that, so it's exactly the same price. I think at first it retailed at $899, but I paid $699. Now I think you can pick them up used for probably $350. But anyway, it's a headphone that I originally paid about the same price as what this headphone cost. And then I also did some comparisons to the LSA HP2, which is a headphone that just came out a short time ago, a couple months ago. It is a closed back, but once again, it's in a pretty close price category. It's, I think currently sells for $749. That might just be kind of an initial deal. I think the price may go higher in the future, but right now it's about the same price as this headphone. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the sound of this headphone, and then I'll get into some comparisons with a few other headphones, the two I just mentioned. And I do want to compare it a little bit to the Mania and the Phobos, the other two headphones from Erzetich that I have reviewed. First thing I want to talk about is tone balance. And like I said, depending on whether I use a solid state amp or the OTL tube amp, I've got two different opinions on this. I initially listened to this for my first for my first impressions video with the GSX Mini, which is a solid state amp, and I described this headphone as being very neutral in tone balance. Well, when I switched over to the Felix Audio Echo, it wasn't so much neutral anymore. It changed the sound quite a bit. The first thing I noticed is quite a bit more weight to the bass. There was significantly more weight to the bass. The bass was still tight and solid, but it just had a lot more weight and it had a lot more extension into the sub bass. So instead of being neutral, I would say there's a noticeable bump in the mid bass and even a little bit into the sub bass with this headphone using the Echo tube amp. Also, I noticed that the mid-range seems to have a little bit of dip on the tube amp. I would say the upper mid-range. There's just a slight dip in the upper mid-range, and the treble I think stays pretty much the same. So basically a neutral tone balance with solid state and a little bit of a slight V-shape, just a slight dip in the upper mid-range lower treble with the tube amp, and a noticeable hump in the mid-bass. As far as frequency extension, with the solid state amp, I would say the treble has good extension, but the sub bass was a little bit lacking. This headphone has good solid bass, and it's where it should be for a neutral headphone. If you're a bass head and looking for a huge amount of bass, this probably isn't the headphone for you. This is a neutral headphone that plays music back the way it was recorded. That's with the solid state amp. With the tube amp, there is a bit of an emphasis in the bass, but still probably not enough to make a bass head happy. The frequency extension with the tube amp, the treble stayed about the same, but there was definitely more extension into the sub bass. I originally would have said that this headphone really doesn't have much for sub bass. It has real good mid bass, but I would have said it rolled off pretty quickly in the sub bass, but with the tube amp, the sub bass really came to life and really became present. You know, I mean, it really does have a solid sub bass when hooked up to the Echo. Talking about the bass, either way, the bass with either amp, the solid state or the tube, the bass is solid and tight. It's just very neutral with the solid state amp, but has a pretty good, it has more weight to it, just more solid, more weight, more impact. You know, just it is a more bassy headphone, but it never gets loose or boomy or anything like that. So, and like I said, with the tube amp, it definitely extended lower into the sub bass, where, you know, originally I would have said, you know, it's just not a sub bass headphone, it's a small headphone and not producing the sub bass. But with the tube amp, it really surprised me, it did. The mids, I would say they're kind of up front, they're real close, or they're in your face, but not never harsh. Female vocals, I'm hearing them real close. They're not distant at all, but they're very present. I'm just hearing a slight roll off in the upper mids and getting into lower treble, and where I think that is kind of what it's doing is it's kind of eliminating or lowering the background noise of the recording. You know, every recording is going to have a slight amount of hiss or background noise in it. And this headphone seems to have a little bit of dip right where that's at, where it just kind of lowers that, which is actually very pleasant because it makes for a very black background and the music just stands out more. Another headphone that I noticed did this was the Beyerdynamic T1 second generation. Same thing, kind of that little bit of dip up in the range of where background hiss would be, which really made for a quiet background and a really pleasant listening experience. So I think this slight dip might have been deliberate for that reason. The treble, it's there, it's present, it's clean, it's clear, it's got enough sparkle to be enjoyable, but it never sounds harsh, it never sounds sibilant, does not get fatiguing. I would say the treble's just about right on these headphones. Getting into clarity and detail, if you watch my first impressions, I said that is this headphone's strong point, and this headphone has exceptional clarity and detail. I mean, it is up there with the best. It's not absolutely the most, but to find a headphone that's significantly better, I mean, the only one in the price range, I would say the LSA HP2 has slightly more detail, but I would say the Hi-Fi Man HE500 actually has slightly less. I mean, to get into detail that's even better than this, you're talking going up to the Erzetich Phobos, which is about, I think, $22.50, something like that. The Kennerton Woden, which I think is about $2,400, or, you know, even higher up into like the Kennerton Thror, which is a $3,400 headphone, to really, you know, to be a step up, and not that big a step, a small step up in detail. So I mean, the Hi-Fi Man headphones, the HE500, in my opinion, is real similar in sound to the Hi-Fi Man Sundara, and that is known as a very detailed headphone. And I would say the detail on this is actually slightly better than the HE500. It's good or better than the Sundara, and almost up there with the LSA HP2, which has incredible detail for a mid-fi priced headphone. I wanted to talk about the imaging and soundstage on this. The imaging, the separation between instruments is actually very good. I don't hear any blurring together of the instruments. The voices stand out on their own. The only thing that is lacking about the imaging, and I've really got to get into the sound stage to tell you why. Okay, the sound stage on these, like I said, these are an open back headphone, but they are a small headphone. Okay, the sound stage on these has quite a bit of width. You know, I'm hearing sounds quite a bit out beyond the headphones, both to the left and right. But what these headphones are lacking a little bit is they don't have a whole lot of height to the sound stage. I'm not hearing much up higher or down lower, and they're kind of lacking in depth. I'm not hearing anything that really sounds like it's out in front of me. Most of the sound stage is just very close. It's either in the middle of my head or just right in front of my eyes. That's where I'm hearing the female vocals from, a lot of the instruments. So there's not a lot of depth to the sound stage. I'm not hearing things out here. Okay, because of that, that kind of limits the imaging. Even though I can separate each instrument, I'm not picking up on the depth of the instruments, how far away they are. So the imaging is very good as far as separation between instruments. Each instrument has its own location, side to side, and they're separated very good where they're not blurring together, but I'm not really able to locate each instrument as far as the distance away from me. So the sound stage lacking depth is actually holding the imaging back a little bit, in my opinion. I did want to talk about dynamics. These are actually quite dynamic, and when plugged into the Echo tube amp, they actually become more dynamic. The bass actually has quite a bit of hit, quite a bit of thump to it. I'll get into it in a second. I'll compare these, the dynamics to the HE500 and the LSA HP2. I also wanted to mention fatigue, and to me, there's a couple things that can lead to fatigue on a headphone. Number one would be distortion, and that could be in the bass. If a headphone has distorted bass, that will fatigue me real fast. Or harsh treble, or the thing that probably gets me the fastest is sibilance, where, you know, certain notes like piano notes or like a female vocal where it'll have kind of a S sound on the end of, you know, each syllable or whatever, that hiss sound, and that really gets me. That will wear me out fast. But I don't hear any of that on this headphone. I don't hear any harshness. The treble's not overly bright, and I don't hear any distortion anywhere, and the mids are just exceptionally clean. So I would say the fatigue level on this headphone is very low as far as fatiguing my ears. And then as far as comfort wise, it's a very lightweight, 270 grams. I mean, that's, you know, way down there. It's very lightweight. I'm not crazy about on-ear headphones, I will be honest with you. I'm actually more comfortable with an over-the-ear that's kind of, you know, pressing around the ear instead of on the ear. So that does get to me a little bit, but if you're okay with on-ear headphones, these are very light and very comfortable. And something I did forget to mention is that the build quality seems to be really good on these. I mean, everything just fits together, you know. There's a good looking headphone, and it does have a unique look. You know, I mean, as far as anything else I've seen in an on-ear, I mean, the Grotto's, different, you know, headphones, I mean, this just has a completely different look, and, you know, it's going to attract a little bit of attention. I mean, you walk around wearing these, listening with your portable, people are going to notice these and want to know what they are. But anyway, I did want to compare these to a couple of the headphones. I'll start with the Hi-Fi Man HE500. Excuse me a second. like I said, that's a headphone I've had a long time. Probably have a couple thousand hours on it. First of all, the HE500 is a very heavy headphone. I think it's something like 540 grams or something like that. It's one of the heaviest headphones. It has a metal ear cups, and it's just very heavy. So as far as comfort and weight, I mean, this headphone blows away the HE500. Listening to this headphone with a solid state amp, the tone balance is actually very similar to the HE500, just kind of neutral, decent bass but not emphasized, decent extension into the sub bass but nothing special. But when I plug this into the tube amp, and that's not really an option with the HE500. The HE500 is a planar type driver, and it's very power hungry, and it just does not match up well with the Felix Audio tube amp. The amp runs short of current, I think, and it just sounds kind of flat and lacks dynamics. So this headphone, though, was, in my opinion, greatly improved with the tube amp, and all of a sudden this, compared to the HE500, has a lot more weight to the bass and better extension into the sub bass than the 500. The 500 has very good detail, but I think that this is even better. I especially heard it in female vocals, just cleaner, more detailed to their voice and piano notes. They just sounded cleaner and sounded more natural. The treble, I think, is kind of about the same. But like I said, this is just way, way easier to drive, and like I said, I like the HE500, but this in some ways is a better sounding headphone than the HE500. The one advantage that the HE500 does have is it has a much larger sound stage. It probably has a little bit more width, but significantly more height to the sound stage and definitely more depth. This is just a small headphone, and the sound stage is just kind of small. It has decent width, but like I said, not a lot of height or depth, and it just sounds smaller. The HE500 definitely sounds more spacious and more open, and I hear a lot more sound out in front of me. Comparing this to the LSA HP2, which is a headphone that I haven't done my final review on, I've done my first impressions. The LSA HP2 is an exceptional headphone in my opinion, and holds its own against $2,000-$3,000 flagship headphones. So for this to compare to that, that's actually, you know, pretty incredible. The detail's almost there. The HP2 beats it out a little bit, just a little bit clearer, just a little. The sound's just slightly grainy compared, not quite the smoothness of the HP2, but like I said, that's one of the most detailed headphones that I've ever heard. So the HP2 though is a closeback. It is very lightweight and very comfortable, so there's not really an edge with either one. I do actually, you know, prefer the over-the-ear design. The problem with the HP2 being a closeback, there's not a whole lot of width to the soundstage. So actually, this headphone has a little more width, but the HP2 definitely has more height and more depth to the soundstage. The HP2 has excellent extension into the sub bass, the same as the Kennerton Magni that it was kind of based on. So I would say, using a solid state amp, this has definitely has less sub bass than the HP2, but using the Echo, it gets into the sub bass probably as well as the HP2. But using the Echo tube amp, this actually has quite a bit more weight in the mid bass than the HP2. So if you're looking for mid bass punch in slam, this actually, with the Echo, outperforms either the HE500 or the HP2 as far as that mid bass punch and And this headphone is more dynamic than both of those. And neither of those are slouches as far as dynamics. In fact, in my opinion, the HE500 is more dynamic than the Sundara or the HE560. And when this was hooked up to the Echo Tube amp, I thought the bass was quite a bit more dynamic on this than even the HE500. So that's actually, you know, saying something. Like I said, the HP2, the soundstage is a little bit narrow. That's, you know, but that's a trade-off for a closed back headphone. So you can't really compare them in every way. I did want to compare this a little bit to the Mania and the Phobos. I liked both of those headphones a lot. The Mania had kind of a warm, it wasn't the last word in detail, but it had a very warm, kind of a little bit of emphasis to the bass, and just a very pleasant headphone that made everything I listened to sound great. And this headphone, when hooked up to the tube amp, actually sounds very similar to the Mania. It's got that little bit of mid-range warmth. And I did want to mention, going back to the HE500 and the LSA HP2, even with the Thalia hooked up to a solid state amp, it did have a slightly warmer mid-range than either of those headphones. So this does have a little bit more warmth to it than the LSA or the HE500. But when hooked up to the tube amp, it got a lot warmer and more emphasis to the bass, and actually sounded a lot like the Mania. And I really like the Mania, so that's a good thing in my opinion. And this is quite a bit smaller and lighter, and the Mania actually worked out real well with the Felix Audio Echo Tube Amp too. I really like the way it sounded. It's a dynamic driver also, just on a larger scale. And that was a headphone that I also liked quite a bit with the Echo. It didn't make as much difference as it did with this headphone though. The Echo just changed this into a different headphone. Anyway, the Phobos, which is the flagship of the Erzetich line, sells for I think about $22.50. I love the Phobos. It was one of the most detailed headphones I've ever heard. And this, I don't have them here to compare directly, so I can't tell you if this is as detailed as the Phobos, but comparing it to other headphones that I did compare to the Phobos, I don't think it's too far away. What it doesn't have that the Phobos has is the Phobos has a humongous soundstage. Maybe the largest I've ever heard as far as a combination of width, depth, and height. The Phobos just had a huge soundstage that sounded like it was coming from all around me, and this headphone does not have that. Otherwise, you know, it's not that far away in sound. I mean, this, you know, is a good sounding headphone. So basically what it comes down to, I just want to mention a few of my likes and dislikes. It's mostly likes. Very easy to drive, light, comfortable, good looking, well built headphone, exceptional clarity and detail, and if you want it to sound pretty much neutral, hook it up to a solid state amp. If you want it to have a little emphasis in the bass and have a little bit of a warmer sound, try a tube amp with this. And either way it sounds good. I actually preferred the tube amp with it. Dislikes, about the only thing that I could find that I dislike with this headphone is, like I said earlier, a little bit of lack in soundstage. Just not a lot of height, and definitely a lack of depth. I'm just not, you know, some headphones, probably the best at depth that I've heard is the Kennerton Thrower, where I can hear music all the way out here and I can hear it in multiple layers, you know, between here and there, where this, just everything's just kind of right here, right in front of my eyes, or actually in my head. So pretty good width, but not much depth of the soundstage, and that's about the only flaw I have with this. So you know, if you're okay with that kind of an intimate, smaller soundstage, I really can't find any flaws with this headphone. It's just a really good sounding headphone, and I'll be honest with you, after listening to this, to the solid state amps, I kind of had mixed feelings about it. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind that this was a really good sounding headphone. I just wasn't sure if it was $699 worth of good. I mean, it had a similar tone balance and a similar sound to the Hi-Fi Man Sandara, which you can now get for $350, I believe. And it had a smaller soundstage, less height and depth. So, you know, I had kind of mixed feelings whether, you know, it was worth $699. After I listened to this with the Felix Audio Echo, and once again, the Sandara is not a good match for the Echo. When I listened to this with the Echo, it became a completely different headphone, a lot more weight to the bass, but yet tight and clean bass, a little warmth to the mid-range, and after listening to this, if I put on the Sandara, you know, it just sounds... It sounds flat, it sounds just kind of thin and kind of lacking, you know. It's clean, but it just sounds kind of, you know, thin, where this has just got more weight and substance. So, you know, after hearing this on the Echo, I realized how good of headphone this is, and made me think that, yeah, you know, $699 is not a bad deal. I mean, I haven't had the chance. I'd like to compare this to, you know, some other on-ear headphones. I'd really like to compare it to some of the Grotto line, but unfortunately the only Grotto headphone I've heard or reviewed so far is the SR80E, and that's not really a fair comparison. The SR80E is a $99 headphone, so this is 7 times the price. Okay, I did compare them just for kicks, and this headphone is better in every way than the SR80E. I mean, it has a better tone balance, it has better bass, it has cleaner, less harsh treble. I mean, this headphone's better in every way. So I'm hoping to, you know, someday get in some of the, you know, more expensive, higher, you know, a few steps up on the Grotto, and I'd like to see how those sound. Unfortunately, I won't be able to compare it directly because these are going to go back in a few days, because I've had them for like 3.5 months now, and I'm sure they want their headphones back. So anyway, but do I recommend it? Yeah, I recommend this headphone. If you know, you're okay with the, you know, smaller sound stage, if you want an on-ear headphone, very easy to drive, very lightweight, you know, something that you could drive with a portable, this might be just a headphone for you. So yeah, you know, I find no faults with it other than, like I said, a lack of depth of soundstage. That's it. Other than that, this is a great headphone in my opinion. I'm going to wrap this up. It's already way too long. Once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. And you are all welcome to join us at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. We are now up to, I believe, over 8,800 members. So if you haven't checked us out on Facebook, come on over and take a look. Thanks for watching my video.